A man with no name. Heaven or hell. For the breadth of my formative years, I had one goal: to find my, well, we all have our own words for them, my chosen. And every moment thereafter was dedicated to keeping him alive, whether he liked it or not. There were turbulent times before the last city, before humanity found hope for the future. I was prepared to kill for it, to die for it. Quote from A Ghost of the Dark Age. He opened his eyes in the night air and took an even breath. He wasn't even sure how long he'd been asleep, but his immediate instinct was to run. He froze. The voice wasn't his. "You have to run." The man stood up in the evening light. He looked down at himself and saw that someone had dressed him for his own funeral. He didn't laugh, but he thought it was funny. The voice continued. "Can you hear me? Risen, fight for territory in these highlands. We have to move." For the first time, he noticed a small drone buzzing in the air around him, a blazing eye at its center, glowing like a blue sun. It jerked its frame to the left, indicating the light of a faraway settlement. "Head west. I have friends there. They'll help us." The man stared at the drone, frowned, and then ran in the opposite direction. "What? Hey!" the voice cried out behind him. He fled into darkness, tall grass on either side of him flying past. The only thing he could hear was his own breathing and the loud crush of the vegetation he trampled. He was surprised at how fast he was moving. The voice called to him again, far behind him. He heard the roar of the machine before he saw it, and he didn't feel a thing as it exploded out of the tall grass to the right and landed on him, crushing him beneath its bulk. He opened his eyes in the night air and took an even breath. "You died," the drone explained, hovering above him. It was smeared with a dark, flimmy paste, but I brought you back. He stood up and looked down at himself. Same clothes, nothing hurt. The hulking wreck of the machine that had killed him sat in pieces a few meters away, inside a dark, sooty crater. The body of an armored man lay sprawled over the smoldering open-air cockpit, his helmet punctured by a small hole about the size of the drone. "Are you ready to listen? Let me take you to my friends," it said. "This region is full of raiders like this man, led by Risen like you. You've got a lot of catching up to do." "What the hell are you?" The man spoke for the first time. "I'm your ghost. My only purpose is to support you," the drone replied. "You work for me?" "In a manner of speaking, yes." "Is this the afterlife?" "In a manner of speaking," the drone said, nodding at the western lights once more. "Can we go?" "Not that way." The man headed in the opposite direction. The drone watched him trample the high grass and disappear. It stared up at the massive, disfigured orb that dominated the sky, then made a small adjustment to the orbit pattern of its modular armor. It hurried after the man. Dogma. He had been reduced to crawling. His ghost cut serenely through the air above him. "What the hell is wrong with me?" he demanded of the ground. "You're dying from starvation," Ghost said flatly. "I don't believe you," he sneered as he dragged himself over some rocks. "I could fix you," Ghost said. "Don't need you," he said. "I got this." "You're not going to pick a name?" Ghost asked. "Everyone picks a name." "You talk too much." "Some people pick names for their ghosts, too. What should I call you, if you don't want a name?" He'd passed out. The sun beat down directly overhead, a searing marble in the sky. He died a day later after a scorpion stung his prone body. Ghost allowed it. A complete restart would be less complicated. He opened his eyes and took an even breath. "What should I call you?" Ghost asked. He looked at it as if considering, then down at his own hands. "I'm still hungry." Home, Part 1. The light is no gift. It takes everything from you. Makes you forget. Not just your memories, but how to live. Quote from a Dark Age drifter. Etten received its first visitor in years. Germain watched the armored men and women climb down from their silver transports. They were risen, being said to be unkillable, and they fought against each other in a war without end somewhere beyond Etten's borders. This particular group, the Iron Lords, represented new ideology, and claimed they fought to put an end to the fighting. Led by a man named Dryden, they had paid each family in Etten several months' worth of supplies and rations to stay the week. They planned to stage an ambush on another of their kind, someone known only as the Red Man. 2 weeks ago, survival was in doubt. Now, because of the generosity of the Iron Lords, the little town would make it through the winter. Germain's friend, Judson, emerged from a neighboring supply shed and struck a single finger in the air as the riders strode up. Germain chuckled and shook his head, but said nothing. "How you livin'?" Judson greeted the Risen, holding his finger high. "Settle down, Judson," Germain called out. "Shut your hole, Germain," Judson returned, hand still in the air. "Your name is stupid, and you're stupid too." Germain shook his head and grinned ruefully. Judson had warned the town against the arrangement, shouting to everyone who would listen that he'd take care of food, that these iron freaks would only bring trouble. He was a very good huntsman, possibly the best Etten had ever seen, and somehow produced deer, duck, and bull from the decimated hills. But even Judson had come up short for months. The war beyond Etten had intensified. The adults went hungry so the children could eat. It wasn't a sustainable position. "We'll be out of your way soon," said one of the Iron Lords, who nodded at Judson as he passed by. Her voice was as metallic and cold as her helmet. Judson spat and didn't take his eyes off of them as they walked the length of the town to secure hidden positions around its perimeter. Home, Part 2. "Sir, this is awful." A Dark Age drifter. Yu was 9 cycles old and visited often. She and her family lived next to Judson, and sometimes they sent her to Germain when their boisterous neighbor was too belligerent, as he was today. Germain didn't mind. "Judson doesn't think it was a good idea to let the Iron people stay with us," she was saying. She paced slowly back and forth across the length of the shack, stepping carefully over the game of cards Germain had laid out on the bare dirt floor. "I know, but Judson says a lot of things, and sometimes you gotta be decisive. You see how much food they gave us?" Germain said, placing a card down. A lamp flickered nearby. Next to it, the largest pile of ration boxes the shack had ever held. "Judson knows how to use guns. I've seen him. Maybe he can..." No, he can't. Those things out there, he can't kill. Just get that out of your mind right now." Yu kept pacing, frowning slightly as she considered it. "More food is nice, but Judson thinks they're going to get us dead. I think he might run away," she said. He laid another card down. "Appreciate what you get. Your parents were skipping dinner so you could have yours. The Risen solved that for us. For a little while. We have to let them stay." She stopped pacing to consider it, and looked up at the sheet metal ceiling. I don't want to die. You won't, Germain said. Why don't you go see what your parents are up to? I'm a little beat. Okay, she said, shrugging. She left. Germain opened a small box of water from the pile of ration packs and poured a tin full. You hadn't noticed because it was difficult to see in the flickering lamplight, but his hands shook. Judson's breath steamed in the night air as he shut the gate that bordered town as quietly as he could. Shivering would mean shaking the rickety thing and waking up Yu's family, so he kept the handle gripped tight as he pushed it back into place. He now stood out the pass out of Etten Valley. As he turned around, he walked right into Germain. Didn't see you there, brother, Judson growled low, stopping just short of throwing an elbow into his neighbor's throat. He backed up a step. Just one. Where you running to this late? Germain asked. Brother? What are you, dense? Away from this before the shooting starts. We gotta trust this Lord Dryden knows what he's doing, Germain said. Judson shook his head. You and all the dealmakers are gonna get this town dead. These guys are worse than the stories. You know how I feel about Risen, but they saved us this week. Judson sneered. No one ever believes it because Risen look like you and me, but they'll kill you without meaning to. Naturally as breathing. They can't help it. They're looking to jump one man. Just one. We gotta see this through. Even the Risen can contain a fight at that scale. Are you gonna move, or do I move you? Germain stepped to the side. I'm not the law, but where you gonna go? There's nothing but war land out there, and their prey's coming. I'm a tracker. Kept this town fed for years before you got here. I'll be fine. And that other Risen won't care about one man passing through. I got nothing to hide. Just need to get away. If you all want to play bait for the warring dead, have a nice life. Germain chuckled. What's funny? Judson sneered in that low voice again. I don't know how you do it. I almost admire you. How's that? You've got no fear. Have a nice life, brother. I'll see you when I see you. Germain walked back to the gate. Home. Part 3. Who are you? Would you know me if I gave you a name? Your ghost made a fatal error. Couldn't catch it, but I confirmed it on tracker. The hell is this? You think I'm one of you? Brother, you got another thing coming. How is it that I find one man all the way out here then? No food or water for miles. I manage. I have ways to make you tell us what we want to know. The warlord campaign in this region never reached into the Southern Valley. Are there any settlements you know of, nearby? Anything tucked away in the valley, or inside the mountain range? You could tell me, or I could start cutting. Might be you missed something. You're coming with me. I plan to scout the valley myself, but now I think I'll bring friends. Germain's hands shook when the warlords, Risen who'd conquered the lands they found, brought Judson back to Etten during midday a week later. Half the town came out to see them. One of the men wore red armor that fit the description of the warlord that Dryden and his lords were waiting for. They say that one Risen, reasonably armed, can annihilate an army. Two Risen, assuming adequate cover for ghost support, can fight infinite armies indefinitely. 6 warlords dismounted their machines in a line at the center of town, weapons drawn. They dropped Judson on his knees in front of them. No restraints. He looked unhurt. Does anyone want to claim this runt? Asked the red man. We will, Germain said. People groaned. Yu tried to run to Judson, but her parents held her back. "A question first," said the Red Man. "Where are the Iron Lords? We saw one of their ghosts. One of these..." He tapped the bladed carapace of his own drone companion as it floated past him, its eye fixed on the townspeople. "They like to meddle. Maybe they helped you? Brought you some food? It would explain how you survived out here in this wasteland. But I can guarantee you their motivations are not in your best interest." The Red Man paused, scanning the crowd as his ghost orbited in front of him. "The Iron Lords are trying to disrupt the established order, and we're here to liberate you from them. You are under our care now. So, where are they?" Germain shut his eyes for a long moment. When no one else spoke, he decided he would. "You're right, they were here, but they're long gone. We paid them for supplies, and they moved on a week ago." "Did they?" The Red Man raised his hand cannon and shot Yu's father in the head. The entire crowd flinched and huddled together as the man fell backward. Yu's mother cried out in a fury, but held her child tight. "Hand to my heart," Germain said, holding his breath as he waited for the hidden Iron Lords to make a move. The Red Man held his gun in the air, watching the townspeople intently. The other warlords scanned the horizon, gleaming weapons at the ready. Judson took the pregnant pause of an opportunity to pull a fallen shock blade from one of the warlord machines. He gave a triumphant yell and decapitated the armored Risen closest to him. As the body fell, he jabbed the length of the blade through the Red Man's back. A third warlord pulled a glaive out of Judson's hand and stabbed him in the side with a gauntlet blade, then hurled him backwards over the machines. All hell broke loose around Germain as the Iron Lords suddenly opened fire from their positions in the surrounding hills. The townspeople scattered as the fallen warlords rose in scintillating pillars of light, the weapons in their hands roaring to life and spitting tracers. The ghost watched from high above the clouds. Over the ages, it had gotten very good at hiding. It had gotten very good at the peculiar things its chosen had asked for it to learn. Down below, gunfire and explosions of light tore through the collection of huts and shacks. The townspeople fled for their lives in the midst of fire and otherworldly flame as the Iron Lords finally abandoned their sniper positions in the hills to close in on the warlords at the town center. Through it all, the ghost saw one of the men emerge out of the discharge of an errant explosive device, cradling the body of a child. He moved to relative safety behind one of the shacks and knelt down, holding an ear to the child's face. She was trying to speak. One of the armored riders in the town square raised a heavy machine gun in one hand and raked the length of Eton with golden tracers. The ghost lost visibility of the townspeople as the hail of machine gun fire filled its vantage point with a whirling cloud of dirt and dust. The annihilating, sense-shattering explosions came soon after, and the ghost increased its elevation. It waited until long after the battle had died out, and the surviving Risen had all left, before lowering itself back down to Earth. It wasn't even sure which side had won. It didn't matter, though. The day had turned to dusk. Greetings, Guardians. Thank you for tuning into this first video on the A Man with No Name lore book from Destiny 2. We'll be releasing the second video on it, which will finish the story up sometime soon. So if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe, because those numbers let me know that you guys like the content. And at the end of the next video, if you have any particular lore you want me to delve into, you can post in the comments and I'd be happy to take suggestions. But for now, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and I will see you guys later.